Welcome to National Matters. I'm your host, Patrick Soko, and today in studio we have our guest who is a prominent lawyer as well as Zambia Must Prosper President KELVIN BWALYA, also commonly known as KBF. Welcome to the program, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Soko, and good evening to the viewers.
Interesting. We are glad that you managed to honor our invitation to be part of this discussion.
It's been a long time since I was here, but here we are.
Interesting. To just get started, first of all, we understand that Zambia Must Prosper is among new political parties that we have in the country. How are you getting to go to the ground in terms of mobilizing yourselves as a political party?
Well, we are growing in numbers. We have already launched Operation Yellow Submarine, so we are underground, we're working. The youths, the women are on the ground, they are working, and the numbers are growing. We are also trying to ensure that the structures are strengthened. And soon we shall be launching our manifesto, economic manifesto for the nation, and from there we start visitation at national level. So we're good, we're very good.
To just also get to know more about Zambia Must Prosper, what political philosophy do you espouse as a political party?
Well, basically we are Democrats. And more than that, we're Christian. And you can probably call us social Christian Democrats in that regard. But we are very grounded with being pro-poor, and we want to ensure that we look after the Zambians, especially those who can't defend themselves, the vulnerable, the poor, and especially the youths as well. The women, more importantly.
Interesting. You talk about being a pro-poor. And in Zambia, we have seen that most of the political parties that have come, they portray characteristic of, let's say, they are Democrats as well, but they are all more capitalists. Is it the same with this political party?
No, we are not capitalists. I think you leave that to the current government. They are the capitalists. Their conduct, their behavior, and their association is very clear. They don't care about the poor people. The decisions they take, shows that they're not really concerned with the masses per se. But we are, and we're very grounded and rooted with the Zambian people. And all decisions that we shall take will be for the benefit of the poor Zambians.
Many Zambians would wonder, why did you opt to form this political party and not just join another political party, but you opted to have your own political party? Is it a question of, as you as political leaders, being selfish or just opting to take over the leadership of this country?
Selfish. I would never call myself a selfish per se. I am a very open-minded person. I like working with people, and I think you'll remember that at the time, just before the elections last year, 2021, the Patriotic Front expelled me from their party. After that expulsion, I was more or less not really being very political. And then we received, invitation to help the current government. So we went into an alliance, we helped them, but not to join them. No, because I realized that our political philosophies were very different. I also realized that basically there was no economic agenda that the Zambians were going to really see as progressive as can be seen by the decisions that the UPND has since taken up to date.
Interesting. Thank you for that response. Well, our dear viewers, in case you are just joining us, you are watching National Matters, and in studio we have Zambia Must Prosper President KELVIN BWALYA, also commonly known as KBF, and we are discussing what are the failures and successes of the UPND government. And we just started our conversation. We are looking at, first of all, what is this political party all about, and what do they bring in the Zambian political landscape. Later on, we'll be opening our phone lines in case you want to join the conversation. You can do so, and also leave us that message, tell us where you are watching us from, so that we can get the conversations going. Now, moving on, sir, You mentioned an interesting perspective pertaining to the UPND alliance. You were invited, and you participated in persuading Zambians to vote for the UPND alliance.
Yes.
And you are saying to the contrary, the UPND is not living to the expectation. Do you regret having been part of those people persuading the UPND, the people to support the UPND alliance?
At the moment, yes. That's one of my most serious regrets as a politician.
How do you intend to correct that mistake?
By kicking them out of power. It's very simple. I mean, if they don't perform, you kick them out. And I know right now that they're failing, lamentably failing, to run the affairs of this country. And this is why Zambia Must Prosper is here to tell the Zambians that we are the alternative. We have very clear policies, and we understand from where we're coming from, our experience, and of course, our history. So we know what we want to do for this country. And that's the difference that you're going to see with Zambia Must Prosper. But of course, we'll also see if we can work with other political parties and ensure that the Zambians get the correct leadership this time, and not just people who want power for the sake of power. No.
Talking about engaging other political parties for possible alliances or working together with other political parties, we have seen you of late visiting leaders of various political parties, engaging them. First of all, is that an insinuation that probably you want to venture into an alliance, and how would you intend to make this alliance work, given the history that we have in this country pertaining to political alliances?
Well, Zambia Must Prosper is a very open-minded party. And if an alliance is going to benefit the Zambians, we are for that alliance. But we must agree from the outset as to the conditions, terms and conditions of such an alliance, and why and with whom. More importantly, with whom. Because there are certain parties we can never work with.
Such as?
The current regime.
But what about if they say they agree to what you are suggesting and you should work together?
Mr. Soko, it's only a naive person. Remember what Einstein said. Yeah, stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. We're not stupid. We're not gullible. Zambia Must Prosper is very objective, and we want to tell the Zambians enough is enough, and it's time to move on. This leadership is a failed leadership, although it's run by my friend. But it's a failed leadership.
Now that brings me to another interesting aspect of our conversation. We are assessing them. They are clocking 2 years in office, and on the 24th they will be having their anniversary. Just on that, why do you say the UPND administration under President Hakainde Hichilema has failed, is a failed leadership?
Well, it arrived as a stillborn baby. You know what that means. It has never delivered anything. It never came to life. You know, when a woman is pregnant, Asoko, the expectation is that we're going to have a very nice, bouncy baby, healthy, kicking, and, you know. That's what everybody expected, with all the promises that UPND made from the mouth of Hakainde Hichilema, my good friend, the president, promising heaven and earth. But what have we seen? It's a stillborn, dead on arrival. There's nothing there. If this government is going to be said to have achieved anything, they are a very good government at pronouncements. If we were going to judge the UPND on pronouncements, they would get a distinction, A+. Their pronouncements are obvious. They have been very good at pronouncing that there's free education. Tick. They've been very good at pronouncing that, you know, they've given meal allowances to the students. Tick.
You mean they don't exist?
Listen, I am making the pronouncements as they've made them.
Exactly.
A pronouncement is not doing. So please allow me to show you that they've made the pronouncements, and we can give them distinction for pronouncing the things.
So you are on the second one,
Yes.
which you mentioned.
They've also
allowances.
talked about increasing CDF. It's a very nice pronouncement. They've also mentioned that they were going to give free education. Do you get where I'm going?
Yes.
Okay. The UPND is also on record and saying to the Zambian people they will reduce the cost of fertilizer. They will reduce the cost of fuel. There will be no load shedding. Economic tariffs in the cost of doing business will come down. All these pronouncements are very good. For just making those pronouncements, yes, the UPND can score A+. And the various other pronouncements. One practical thing they've tried to do is to give 20% of partial withdrawal of NAPSA. They've done that. They've also said that they were going to do the Ndola-Lusaka dual carriageway. They've made that pronouncement.
And they'll say they will be doing that.
Well, I stand corrected. But for me, I am saying, in terms of making pronouncements, those are the pronouncements. And if you hear the UPND talk about achievements, that's what they rely on. They also told us they were going to stop cadreism. They were going to bring back the rule of law. They were going to instill good governance. Have they done those things? No. Does it take 2 years for a government to do things like that if you are ready to govern? No, Mr. Soko. Those are the pronouncements that the UPND has made. And if you are going to talk of successes, those are their successes. Pronouncements. Let me finish. Amalanda kanya.
You can proceed. You can proceed.
Ukulanda fie. So that the Zambians can have a feel-good factor. Like they know what they are doing. Like I said, this is a stillborn baby, dead on arrival. They've done absolutely nothing to improve the lives of the Zambians. So let's put those, if those are the achievements, let's put them aside and weigh now against their failures. And that's the problem, because the failures are too many. Number one, when we were discussing in the alliance, we said that we are going to bring back the unity of this country to where it's supposed to be. That hasn't happened. There's been total failure on trying to discuss the unity, genuine unification of this country. We have seen regionalism coming up.
How has that manifested?
It has manifested in the many appointments that the president has made. It has manifested in the many dismissals and termination of employment of many civil servants who did not deserve to be fired or dismissed from government, but simply because they came from a certain region. We have the numbers, we have the facts. Is that unifying the country? No, that's total failure. In fact, the country now is more divided on regional lines. I dare say, you could almost see in there a sense of tribalism. A sense of tribalism. And that's very dangerous for a nation such as Zambia. Why are we going back to things we promised we were going to change? Why is that? It is because the person in authority today didn't have the means of bringing the nation together, or did not have the actual intention to bring the nation together. That's the problem. Why is an H Congo into leadership? That's wrong. Second failure of the UPND, to try and brush away everything that the previous government did, and fault finding everything that the previous government did. Governments are run on continuity, Mr. Soko. Continuity. You can't come and start clearing desk like there was nothing except you. You've heard them pronounce, for instance. No, now we've got freedom, like we never had freedom before. Now we are free to talk, like we never talked before. The president, that guy in the Ichirama, in opposition, was on radio castigating the previous government. He was free. Today, that's not happening. The arrests, the many arrests of opposition leaders today in a government that promised freedom of speech, freedom of yourselves as the press, how is that going to work? That's a total failure. It's a scandal. For a government that promised that they were going to do this and they're failing, it's a problem. So, for me, starting from the very essence of the democratic dispensation, they have begun to fail. But let me show you a bit more of the failures, because I thought to myself, if I wanted to speak to the nation, I should speak factually so that the nation understands.
Let's quantify it.
Yes. In the provision of the breakdown of the rule of law, the UPND in opposition was a crybaby. They were always crying. There's not enough space. No, they're using the Public Order Act against us, etc. What are they doing today? They're doing the same. They're castigating opposition, arresting almost every opposition leader they can find, harassing every opposition leader who dares to speak under the guise that they're fighting corruption. That's not how you fight corruption. The preoccupation by the UPND against the former president, Edgar Chagwa Lungu, to have his family arrested, harassed, thrown up and down in police, warn and caution statement. Today, it is Madam Esther Lungu, the former First Lady, being harassed. Tomorrow, it is Tasila. The other day, it is Dariso. What do you think is happening to the mind of the former president psychologically? And in terms of the people that support that family and the political players around the country and across the world, what are they saying? This is how we're going to run our democracy.
So the argument would be that you as a proponent of the rule of law, they would also argue to say, we are applying the law.
Mr. Soko.
That those who have committed the crimes,
yes,
they should respond.
Of course.
Are you saying probably if people who committed crimes, if they are prominent, we ignore it?
I never say that. I'm a lawyer by profession.
Exactly.
But I'm saying...
And this subject is something that you continuously talk about.
But at the end of the day, the manner in which it is being done, we all know that there is some sinister motive behind that. Sinister motive. Backed up by a sense of fear for the former president. Further, the UPND is killing human rights. They have killed the civil society. Have you heard any of the civil society people condemn the UPND? Those who are talking against PF in the previous regime. They've given everybody jobs. They are PSs, they are commissioners, they are what? They're not talking. They've been silenced. Maybe with just Osida. There have been some meetings in trying to silence Osida, but Osida stood his ground. And thumbs up to them. Because they're principled, men of integrity. You can have a meeting with them, but you're not going to stop them from talking. Osida is one which has stood up. But the rest, have you heard them, Mr. Soko? This is scandal. You don't silence the social critics by giving them appointments. You don't want them to criticize you? What are you scared of? In addition to that, in the media space, we have seen, and I'm talking good governance, the rule of law. We have seen this so-called director in government, media director, my young brother, Tawokawana, a very good dear friend, storming into studios, TV stations, radio stations, disturbing the opposition when they are live on radio and television. He is a civil servant. He goes and starts doing politics on radio and television, storming radio stations and TVs unannounced, uninvited. These are scandals.
He said he had sought permission every time he has visited the station.
It does not matter from whom he seeks permission. The owners of the studio, like now, you invited me here. You want Tawokawana to come here?
Not at all.
Are you ready for Tawokawana here?
Not at all.
Yeah, but if he walks in, then he has sought permission from who? Let's be real. Huh? We've heard a young man from Brazil, some excited little diplomat, Chela Tukuta. A very nice young man. He used to be a photographer. I don't know, now he's a diplomat. Issuing threats from Brazil. I'm coming to form a militia of junkies and will start beating the opposition. They should start respecting the president. But he's a civil servant, for God's sake. A civil servant. Wasoko. Have you heard anybody in government condemn the actions of Tawokawan? Have you heard anybody in government condemn the actions of Chela Tukuta? Getting salaries paid by us as taxpayers, but doing politics. These are scandals. Scandals. There has been no government official comment. Police have not arrested these people. No political statement, not even from the president. And I dare say, nothing from the civil society. Because they've been bought to silence. This is how the UPND is working, to silence the opposition. They've continued the victimization of ordinary Zambians who seem to have a bit of wealth. Anybody who seems to have a bit of money in Zambia, arrest him. Why? Because according to them, it's proceeds of crime. Masoko. Why are Zambians going to be condemned to perpetual poverty simply because the UPND is uncomfortable with people having money? Why? We have seen the arrests of people like Findlay. We have seen the arrests of people like the owner of Savenda. These are Zambians. As Zambian businessmen, employing Zambians. Some of them are closing their companies. As many as 800, 1,000 people being thrown out. No employment. For what? Because they've got a little bit of money. You think the Zambians are happy? So according to the UPND, only the UPND must have money. Only the UPND must be doing business. Nobody else. This victimization of Zambians must stop. Why should Zambians not have money? Why should Zambians be wallowing in poverty? Where is this law coming from? I'm still going about the scandals of the UPND. This one-sided corruption fight, which they claim they are making or fighting, against whom? It's just against the former regime, the former ministers, the former president and his family. No one else. Whom, with all the scandals we've heard in the UPND government, have you heard that they've arrested? In their government, in their civil service?
The people behind Sujirite are among those arrested.
Please. The big fish. Which big fish has been arrested? Name a big fish. Because the people in the Sujirite scandals are saying they'll talk. But they want to talk in court. Because in court they'll enjoy a qualified privilege. They can say what they want. Outside they don't want to talk. But they know that there are bigger people involved in Sujirite. These are scandals. In addition, Mr. Soko, there are countless UPND economic scandals.
Such as what?
One, the selling of our strategic maize reserve is a scandal. A serious scandal, which has made the price of mealie meal to skyrocket. Are you not buying mealie meal above 300 kwacha Soko?
Yeah.
No, let me not do the interview. Perhaps I'm just asking rhetorically. Are you not buying mealie meal above 300? Oh, the Zambians are suffering, just like you and me. The UPND lack a clear agricultural policy. They've damaged FUBE. They've brought about useless cooperatives, which are not helping the poor Zambians. Government has cheated farmers. Another scandal in the growing of soybeans. They told them there's a market in China. Grow soybeans. You shall market your soybeans for you. When the soybeans is produced, government backpedals. We're not buying your soybeans. It's a scandal. Farmers don't work like that. Farming is a seasonal business. You plan based on the season. It's a scandal. So what's going to happen to those farmers? Now the price has dropped. Why? Because they're desperate. They have to sell to briefcase companies, briefcase businessmen. Government has pulled out. I've heard Palasteapa. Government is now trying to come back on the rebound to say, no, we'll buy something. No. There's some scandal going on here. Because soybeans, just like maize and other legumes, trust me, Basoko, it also feeds cattle. Somewhere along the line, someone is more interested in feeding cattle than feeding people.
Someone like who?
You can do your math. They've continued single sourcing fertilizer, scandal upon scandal fertilizer. I'm just trying to tell you the number of scandals, economic scandals in the UPND. This single sourcing of fertilizer is a scandal. Zambians are not getting the benefit from this fertilizer because the price is skyrocketing. The cancellation of procurement bids which have been won by people is a scandal. Whenever people are doing bidding, they waste a lot of time, money, and effort in making those bids. Then you just come and cancel. Then you single source, wasting people's time. These are businessmen. They plan. What are we doing, Basoko? Further, the single sourcing of medicines from Egypt or some other countries, again, it's a scandal. There are no medicines in the hospital now. People dying of cancer. People dying of diseases which are preventable, curable. Why? There are no medicines. Bad equipment in the hospitals. Or the lack of equipment totally. Malfunctioning of equipment. Not maintaining and repairing equipment. Not replacing the damaged equipment in the various hospitals across the country. People are dying. Not enough space for mothers to deliver when they have C-sections. Operating theaters, minimum. Whenever you have a woman undergo a C-section, medical procedure says that environment must be left for some time before another woman can go and deliver in there. That's not what's happening. Ask the mothers. These are people. They're not animals. No matter how much you try to disinfect an operating room, there's always a danger of infection for the next patient. This is what's happening today. It's real. And the UPND is watching. Have you ever heard of new equipment being bought? No. It's always my sister, Honorable Masebo, accusing medical staff of stealing medicine when there's no medicine. They're trying to blame the wrong people. Have you ever heard anybody being arrested for stealing medicine? But it's a pronouncement they make so that they cover up their inadequacies. How do we live? These are scandals. Scandals, Basoko. Further, there is also the scandal with what pronouncement they made. I referred to it as a pronouncement. The 25% or 20% NAPSA.
Partial withdrawal.
Partial withdrawal. Maybe let me educate the Zambians on this so that the Zambians can understand. When we were in PF, between 2012 and 2013, I recall this clearly, the late President Michael Chilufya-Sata set up a technical committee which was led by a PS called Trevor Kaunda. Mm-hmm. They went round the globe, visiting the West, the European countries, the Asian countries, some SADC countries, and came up with a report about what kind of security system we're going to have for the civil servants. A report was given, and government came up with procedures. That's how NAPSA moved from where it was before to what it is now. Mm-hmm. What they found from those countries, those reports, if they dare to read the UPND, they'll know that the reason why it was always advisable for people to get their money at retirement is that many people, when they are still working, when you give them money, they are not ready for that money. So they waste it. And because it's partial withdrawals, you can't build a house from 20% of your money. You can't even buy a car. But you've heard the president saying you can do business. What business? Let him tell us what business is he proposing the civil servants do with that 20% partial withdrawal. The only reason this 20% partial withdrawal was given to the civil servants is because there was no money in circulation in the country. So the government found a way of putting some money in circulation. Why is there no money in the economy? We're not producing anything. Why are we not producing anything? We've given tax holidays to the mines in Northwestern Province. Tax holidays. So we're not getting any money.
The argument has been that government has no business doing business.
Yeah, but we've got a businessman in State House, isn't it? Who doesn't live in State House anyway, he lives in Community House. So we don't know who visits him there. We don't know what's happening there. But we hear things. We hear, Asoko. We've got ground to say what we're saying today. Another scandal is telling the Zambians for over 2+ years that, according to them, they're still negotiating with Vedanta. Negotiating what? The miners on the copper belt are suffering. I come from the copper belt. I'm a Kopala boy. I was born and raised in Muflira. I know the copper belt like the back of my hands. I know every town on the copper belt. I know how the copper belt used to be. I know what it is today.
Yeah, we saw the Minister of Mines coming to the press to say they are working to negotiate better deals. No wonder they couldn't make that announcement as earlier announced. And we have continued to talk about the same issue pertaining to Mopani as well as Vedanta. But what have you assessed has been the possible consequences of the handling of those, the poor handling of those two mines?
But so these are scandals. Consider them as scandals. Me, I'm not calling them negotiations anymore. They're scandals. When you are a responsible government, your citizens are suffering, and you continue to negotiate with a guy who is playing the lives of your people, called Vedanta, who in the past you know has been polluting your rivers. What are you doing with him? Some of these decisions, you need to take political decisions. And I'm saying to the people on the copper belt, for Zambia must prosper, we will not negotiate with such people. We will take over the mines. Because the government under Zambia Must Prosper is capable of running the mines.
They're saying that Zambians have no technical capacity to run the mines.
This is the narrative they want to drive. I have said I have lived on the copper belt. I have grown up on the copper belt. ZCCM was run by Zambians. The late Francis Kaunda was a chairman. Every one of those divisions on the copper belt was run by a Zambian engineer as a mining manager. So that's a lie, including one of their own in government today, Honorable Milupi. He was in Mufulira with me. Then he went to Kalulushi. He used to run the mines. So they can't lie. Let them not lie. These are scandals. I am going on with the scandals. Are you going to
proceed?
Yes. So after this committee submitted to the late SATA, a NAPSA new regime came up, and it was agreed that because people don't know how to use money when they are working, they don't know how to plan. It's difficult for them to have their money withdrawn whilst they are working. Let them get a salary, not even a lump sum, because lump sum people spend. Some of them leave their wives and go and get young ones, and they get remarried and they suffer midlife crisis. There are a lot of problems. That report is interesting. I wish the UPND would have read this report. I'm aware of this technical report. PS Trevor Kaunda is around. Government is one of continuity. They must read what they found. Have they read this report? No. They come up with this partial 20% withdrawal because they don't understand the history. That's the problem. It's not everything that PF did which is bad. Once you have that mentality for government, you're in trouble. But further, there's another scandal. They are creating future destitutes under this partial withdrawal of NAPSA. The people who are getting money have been promised that in 2025 they'll get another partial withdrawal. You know what that does? By the time you're retiring, when you're weak, you have no money, and you don't have enough energy to get another job. And then you get very little money. Just like they've done with the debt restructuring, Kathrubo, future problems. Because they know they won't be there. So they're leaving problems for us as Zambia Must Prosper to come and deal with their mess. Mass scandals there. We can't allow that. The Zambians must know. This is the kind of irresponsible government they have. They're dancing today because they've got a little bit of money. What has it done for them? There's another scandal, Mr. Soko. Viewers. It's in the mining sector. We have seen scandals over Sujilite, which you mentioned. These are scandals. We have seen scandals for gold. Scandals. Call them scams, whatever. It's a scandal. We have seen scandals in the manganese sector. Zambians have had their licenses, numerous licenses, cancelled in this government. How irresponsible can you be? Because these licenses were issued by PF. You cancel all the licenses. Kanofeni more much the issue. You have to give the licenses to your friends. Plus in the mines, the failure to find new capable investors for KCM and Mopani. Plus the giving of tax holidays in Northwestern Province. All these are scandals. No one in their right senses is going to deny themselves revenue because you've given businessmen a tax holiday. That's not a good, responsible government. We don't run the affairs of government like that. That's okay. These are people.
We are formulating the budget. What would you recommend?
I'm still talking about the mines. I'll come to that.
Okay.
And then we've seen a lot of corruption in the mining sector. A lot of corruption. The people on the copper belt we call contractors. They're not getting paid. Why? Because KCM and Mopani are not functioning properly. They condemned the PF when PF appointed receivers. What have they done? They come into power, they also appoint receivers. These are scandals. You make a promise, we won't do that, PF, you go and do the same thing. What's the difference between you, your policies, and what PF was doing? No difference. That is why we need good, fresh leadership. There's another scandal, Wasoko. The social and spiritual scandals of the UPND. What are those scandals? The UPND has been so insensitive in the manner they've conducted the removal of the street vendors from the streets.
But the argument would be the PF also made those attempts that
I'm not here to discuss the PF, Asoko. I'm telling you about the failures and the achievements of the UPND. Now I'm dealing with their failures.
How have they failed on that aspect?
They've been insensitive to their own people, the Zambians, who've been on the streets. You don't remove street vendors in the manner they did. Zambia Must Prosper is not saying that there should be so many street vendors that you fail to walk in the streets. No. But the manner in which you do it. You're not dealing with cows. You're not dealing with pigs which you just whip, move. No, you're dealing with people who've got lives, who've got little budgets, little capital. That's their money. That's their livelihood. They feed their children using that money on the street. You give another friend, the other friend also has capital, they buy. All that now is gone. Under the guise, we want to clean the streets. And there's enough room to go in the markets. You go to those markets, Wasoko. Take your cameras, go to those markets. Some cadres have got as many as 5, 6 stands. He's renting them out. So the women have to pay council, and then they have to rent their stands from other people. You're killing the Zambians. Did this government even take out a study to understand where they're taking the people? That's how insensitive this government has been. It's a scandal. These are failures. They haven't even built one new market, but they say they've increased CDF. What is CDF doing?
Commissioning 1 by 3 classrooms. I'm
talking about scandals. Scandals. If you want to remove the vendors from the street, build the markets. Then you say there are new markets, go, there's enough space. Build them new toilets. Sanitation is important also for your people. You just move thousands upon thousands of people into a crammed up place and say, stay there. How many toilets are to it? Have you bothered to check? Have you tried to drive today, Wasoko, to cross Lumumba Road to go to Los Angeles Boulevard, going to Kanyama? You can't cross. It takes hours. The minibuses are being arrested left, right, and center for what they term as contravening by the police. There are thousands of motor vehicles, taxis, and minibuses in Mimosa today. They are suffering. They are even worse than the street vendors. They want to pay their fines. They're being told, you can't pay the fine here, go and pay at court. Because government wants to raise money. The street is clean. That's what they want. But their own people are suffering. Where they're supposed to do business, there's no environment for doing business. These are scandals. UPND is on record. Another social scandal of calling the church clergy Lucifers. These are scandals. You can try and bury all these things, but the Zambians are keeping a tab. These are serious scandals. I'm reminding the Zambians in case they've forgotten. The topic for today is failures and achievements. I told you what their failures are. I mean their achievements. Their achievements are about pronouncements. They just pronounce. Oh, we are going to do this. Oh, we are going to do this. Have they done? But the scandals,
before
we are here.
The scandals. In case you want to join the conversation, you can do so. Remember, we are hosting a Zambia Must Prosper President KELVIN BWALYA, commonly known as KBF. In case you have a question for our guest, you can do so and give us that call so that we can get interacting as he continue to unbundle what he terms as scandals and according to
failures,
what he has prepared for this program. As you continue to discuss the scandals, first of all, because so I'm wondering to say, you are terming everything as being scandals, even the Constituency Development Fund, CDF. Because those who have hosted on this program, on this platform, they say, we have done enough under CDF. The increasing of CDF from 28.3 million kwacha for 2023 is something that when Zambia Must Prosper stands on the podium to campaign, they'll have no message because they would have delivered according to the expectations of the people.
Mr. Soko, go back to what I said.
But you are referring it as a scandal.
Yes, the UPND is very good at making pronouncements. They've pronounced that. Last year it was 25 million. Now they are saying 28 million. Go and ask any constituency whether they've received the full dosage of that Constituency Development Fund. It's a scandal. They want to make it look good to the Zambians, that this is what they're doing. They're not doing. The maximum they've probably given to constituencies is 3 million, if not 5 million, maximum, out of the 25 million. So the pronouncement is big. The action, minimum. It's a scandal. Ngawalayo muntu, ndekuchira ice cream. Ero wamushtaka lollipop, ni ice cream. Come on, Basoko. The scandals here have risen. The drastic rise in the cost of living is another scandal. This rise is because of the failures by the UPND to balance their books economically. And yes, we've got an economist in State House who was doing graphs telling the Zambians, you balance things, petrol will come down, fertilizer will come down, electricity will come down. Those graphs, where have they gone? This is the president we have. These are scandals. These are failures I'm telling you about. The endless trips by the president, using taxpayers' money, flying up and down, just to go and sign a document called a pledge, with nothing to show for in reality. Who does that? These endless trips by the president are also a scandal.
When you become a scandal, Mr. Wadi, given that he's saying that he's marketing the country, he's the chief marketer.
Marketing what?
He's the chief marketer. He has to mobilize
very
the
good,
for Zambia.
Very good that you've brought that term as chief marketer. You are very unpatriotic, President. If you're a chief marketer and then you start insulting your own infrastructure by calling KK International Airport a sausage airport, what are you marketing? Are you thinking? You're insulting your own infrastructure and you say you're marketing? Let's be real. A patriotic president protects and defends his people first, protects and defends the constitution of this country, and ensures that there's food on Zambian people's tables, not flying up and down and then insulting our infrastructure. For what? What is he marketing? He's marketing himself. Marketing himself. These endless trips have brought us nothing but pledges. A pledge, Vasoko, is not real money. It can be given or not. So what marketing? Let's not be cheated. Nimiera, the only thing the UPND is good at is making pronouncements. That I've given them A+. Also, in the agriculture sector, we're continuing with the scandals. The lack of deliveries of inputs in the 2 seasons we've seen this government in power is a scandal. I have told you, for farmers, they plan way in advance. When you fail to deliver inputs, it's a scandal. It means the yield won't be there. It means you're injuring the farmers. You're injuring their workers. You're injuring their business. That's their livelihood. UPND has failed in the agriculture sector. We saw Honorable Mutolo on the floor of Parliament. We shall sell the maize and no one will stop us, bragging and boasting in a very arrogant manner. So we export our strategic reserves. What has happened to the minimum? It's a scandal. It's a scandal.
I think someone wants to join.
No, they are not going to join until we finish the scandals.
How many more?
You told us today we are coming to discuss the failures and achievements. So by UPND, wait until we finish. Because you've been lying to the Zambian people. You are full of scandals. And we should bring them and call you for what you are. You are scandalous.
Let's proceed with those scandals.
The poor marketing of crops in the agriculture sector is a scandal. I mentioned the soybeans. It's a scandal. The lack of marketing our cotton is a scandal. There are cartels in the cotton business. There are cartels now in the maize business. These are scandals which are inflating the prices. Everywhere you look in the agriculture sector, there's a problem. And Zambians are paying the price by buying things more expensively. These are failures by a government which calls itself a responsible government.
Their argument has been that given the circumstances of inheriting an erring economy, how would have, for instance, Zambia Must Prosper been able to overcome such challenges?
Mr. So
and that Zambia is well off. It would have been waste under the PF. Those are some of the terms we are previewed to.
I see. You see, when you don't know how to make an argument, you'll be grasping at straws in running water. Nachilanda. That's what UPND is doing. They're looking for everybody and anyone to blame. And they'll blame PF left, right, and center up to Timbuktu. We are tired. You applied for a job. You campaigned for this job. Do your job. No failures. No blame games. Do your job. Where's your manifesto? Why isn't it effecting change? Because there was none. There was no policy direction economically in this government. It's try and error. That's what they're doing. And the problem we have is we have a president in State House today who doesn't want to be corrected, who doesn't want to be advised. He thinks he knows everything. The next scandal is in the health sector. The health sector is a very important sector because we need our people to be healthy. What is there? The patient-doctor ratio today in Zambia is alarming. Go and study the World Health Organization, World Health Sector ratio. Doctor to patient. How many patients should one doctor be treating? And what is happening in Zambia? It's an insult. Some of these doctors are going to start going mad. The number of people they are clocking, attending to, operating upon. Some of these doctors work 48 hours in a row, no rest. If he rests, it's just to close his eyes and does a power nap. He has to wake up, there's a next patient. What service delivery is that? We need ratios. They told us they had employed 11,000 doctors. It's a lie.
How does it become a lie?
We picked up the newspapers. We counted the number of people that they claim to have employed. In reality, they are less than 5,000. We counted. Ubufi. Kubeja. These are scandals. Stop lying to your people. We can't have a government that lies in the morning, lies at noon, lies at night. They even lie in their dreams. We can't. We're tired, man. These are scandals. These are failures on the part of the UPND. Further, The lack of medicines is a scandal. The quality health care is not there. When you have doctor ratio to patient against the doctor, no medicines, you're frustrating the doctors, the nurses, paramedics, and the other people. We've got a very demoralized medical personnel in this country. Totally demoralized. They can't work. Even when they know what to do, there's no equipment. There's no medicine. Sometimes even gloves run out. In theaters. What kind of government is this?
So while you are thinking about your others, what you term as scandals,
I'm not thinking.
Before you read out those other scandals, first of all, I want to tap into your perspective.
Yes.
We see that one of the targets of this government was to have inflation, a single-digit inflation. But however, the recent review by the Central Statistics Office, the Zambia Statistics Agency, reviewed that we are actually at the West with at 10.3% now. Now that's an off the budget target in terms of estimation. We've also seen that the kwacha has been fluctuating in terms of its performance. But first of all, what would be your general perspective on this economic indicator, and what do you suggest we have to do right in order to get it right, rather?
Basoko, the only answer to inflation is production, production, production. You've got to produce something to sell, something of value to sell. Then you gain foreign exchange. That is how you're going to reduce your inflation. When you have nothing to sell and you're not getting income into the country, what are you going to do? There's going to be pressure on the economy. That's why the Bank of Zambia keeps throwing dollars into the economy when we've produced nothing. To reduce the foreign exchange rate. Every time it hits a certain number, they throw in money there to play with the figures. If they didn't do that, what do you think the rate of the kwacha to the dollar would be today? Don't answer. Think about it. It's a scandal. That's the kind of economics we're playing. Textbook economics. This is the real world, Bwana. You told us you're an economist. You told us you're coming to fix it. You even coined a phrase, BWALYA will fix it. BWALYA will fix it. Fix what?
But you were so supporting that you will fix it when you were in the alliance.
I never supported the BWALYA will fix it term. I just went to support him. Whatever his policies, those are his policies. Now these are the scandals. The next scandal is the education sector.
You are not happy with the recruitment of 30,000 teachers?
First of all, again, they are not 30,000. I've told you, we went to the pages in the newspapers, we bought the newspapers, we counted. They're not 30,000. Niboza you. It's another scandal. You see, I've told you, in terms of making pronouncements, the UPND is very good. I'll give them A+ for making pronouncements. But they don't do what they say. Scandals upon scandals. Those numbers are not correct, and I challenge them to say so.
Is there anything that you term as not being a scandal?
The lack of investment in school infrastructure, resulting in limited space for our children, is a scandal if you're going to declare free education. I will repeat, these are not goats, these are not cows, they are human beings. You don't cram students, pupils in a classroom, 80 to 100 plus in a classroom. You are affecting the quality of their education. You are also putting pressure on the teachers. Instead of marking 30 to 40 books for homework, the teacher has got 100 to mark. The quality goes down. Then you get demotivated teachers. They're complaining.
The argument has been that they'll be able to put in place enough infrastructure, and that other than children staying home, they'd rather be in a school environment, Mr. One.
So, what quality student, what quality pupil are we producing? Even at university, at tertiary, where we used to sit between me and Daga in the Ichilem, in the university auditoriums, where we were 300, 400, and the auditorium would capture all of us. Now they've got 1,200. Others are sitting on the floor, listening to a lecture. Who does that at university? Who are you fooling? The lecturers have to be shouting to be heard. There's a reason why the lecture rooms were designed in the manner they were designed. Build more infrastructure, Bwana. The failure, this lack of building infrastructure, and meanwhile you're pronouncing things to be free, it's a scandal. This is the failures of government. The congesting of classrooms is leading to substandard pupils graduating. Substandard university students, college students graduating. Pressure on the lecturers. We can't do that. Generally, this lack of school equipment also is a problem. When you're studying medicine or engineering, you need certain apparatus.
But how can
it's not there.
But how can a country generate enough resources, given the background that we are a highly indebted country, to be able to address those issues you're talking about?
If you think and plan well, you can do it. But if you want to make pronouncements which will make people feel good and make people think you're doing something like the UPND is doing, go ahead. But come 2026, what I'm saying to you today, the Zambians will remember. These are scandals. And they will not forgive this government. And I'm asking the Zambians not to forgive this government. In terms of pronouncements, yes, they'll pronounce. Are they doing? Of course not. These are failures. Further, the UPND government has totally failed at the international level in terms of foreign exchange, foreign relations.
But they're saying that they have taken Zambia into a League of Nations. Now you are speaking the opposite.
They've taken Zambia where?
In the League of Nations.
No, not League of Nations. What did my friend say, the president? He says we've come to the Super League.
The Super League, exactly.
Champions League. Champions League is back. Which Champions League? Which country? Where are we playing with? Who are we playing with? What game is this? In the Champions League of telling lies, yes, we're there. In the Champions League of scandals, yes, we're there. That's what Hakainde Hichilema is. A liar. He will lie today, lie tomorrow. What else? Champions League good. The Champions League of, yes, we're listening to what the Western world wants us to do. The Champions League of, yes, we're begging from the IMF every day. The Champions League of, yes, I'm going to the European Parliament to address them. Is that the Champions League? Marketing yourself. Is that the Champions League? What does that do to food on Zambian tables? Nothing.
Goodwill from donors.
Goodwill to do what?
From donors to have money to finance poverty.
Yes, of course, and this is why now you're being told that our finance minister is the best performing finance minister. Against who? What was the competition? Against which other countries?
Others who have not yet secured a bailout package.
Debt restructuring. What is debt restructuring? Has that changed the price of minimum? Has that changed the price of fuel? Has that changed the price of fertilizer? Has that changed the price of electricity? No. The scandal that the Zambian government, the last one I wanted to talk about, has failed to do is to reduce the cost of doing business. Two things that this government has control, total control over, is one, the price of electricity. They can control that because they know how much tariffs they input in the ZESCO tariffs. They can control that. They can also control the tariffs they input in fuel. Those two things run the economy.
But
Can I finish?
Can I finish?
Can I finish? Those two things affect the cost of doing business. If they go and change the tariffs on electricity, change the tariffs on fuel, the cost of doing business will drop. But do you know why they won't do that? The answer you just gave. These are conditions from the IMF. This is what Hakainde Hichilema says is the Champions League. Who are you fooling, Bwana? Zambians are suffering. Are you the president of the IMF or the president of Zambia? Be real, president. Be real. My friend, be real. You are the president of the Republic of Zambia, not the president of the European Parliament, not the president of the IMF or the World Bank or your friends. No. Deal with the Zambian food basket. That's what Zambia Must Prosper is challenging you to do. So these things you're telling us, you're joking. We're not serious as a government. UPND is not serious. These failures I have outlined here are just after 2 years in office. What will happen after 5 years? Basoko. What will happen? If you can't even control the rate of tariffs on electricity, which you produce at Kariba, at Itej, at Kafiwe Gorge, but you're obeying the IMF against your own people, what kind of leader are you? Do you care? This is the level of insensitivity that the UPND regime has on the Zambian people. Mwewena Zambia, ba UPND tabami sakamana. We as Zambia Must Prosper are promising you a caring government, a government that will look after you, your families, and everything that you want to do in this country.
Well, our dear viewers, you are watching National Matters, and our guest is Zambia Must Prosper President KELVIN FUBE, also commonly known as KBF, and we have been discussing the failures and successes of the UPND government, and he prepared what he termed a book of scandals, and he has unpacked all the scandals that he believes the UPND has committed. But this is the time where we can also interact with you. We can pick a few calls before we allow our guest to wind up his discussion for the day. You are through to National Matters. Good evening. I'm quite Mavombashan.
I will send it to
Vachaos. Kuti mwakonkanyapo.
They push us on a question president like for 5 years one election I so they the alternative we have Number two, then push more alternative that way looking at very cost of building the form for the alternative but we think about the Number three, that's why looking for alternative they have a satellite without free education concerning education. Number four, that's why looking for differently before, like no case concerning to the previous government, we have to charity before. We should just went upon the community, we have a fundal to the satellite, and the bullet like the mountain, we have the security service. Number 5. Therefore, we shall what is the exact number we are employing young teachers, and not 30,000 teachers are employed.
Twatasha. Thank you very much. You too can join the conversation and give us that call so that we can get interacting with the president for Zambia Master Prosper KBF. And we had quite a number of, we had a long discussion pertaining to that in case you missed, but you can still go through our stream and be able to preview our conversation this evening. However, there are quite a number of questions. 5. And wants alternatives to what Zambia Must Prosper is providing. Are you able to respond to that?
Briefly, yes.
Briefly, yeah. Do a summary of that.
Okay. Well, Charles, with regard to CDF, CDF by itself is not a bad pronouncement if you leave it through. In other words, to 5 million, the people are able to budget based on 5 million. Do you understand me? Not you kubabe pobufi at 1.6 yaba PF to mpera 25 million, and then you don't give them the 25 million which you promised them. That's the scandal in Delandapo. There's always money which is required to go into constituencies, but that's why some of the ministries exist. As Zambia Must Prosper will propose that some of these monies are channeled directly through the ministries so that government at top level can plan and then make sure that the implementation goes per ground. Because again, once you give too much money to these councils, the constituencies, they're not going to make the decisions that you want them to make. Because if the decisions are coming that Perenyama Bazari, Bazari, how many students are in that constituency or each constituency in Zambia? Do you have the database? Is that the duty of CDF? When you've got the Ministry of Education to give bursaries, why are you going to confuse the two? So some of these monies are not supposed to go there. Project implementation is another thing, Charles. What is the Ministry of Infrastructure doing? If you're going to give money to the constituency and say, Tampenu Kulama Bridge, then what is the Ministry of Infrastructure going to be doing? That means the infrastructure, that's on CDF. The problem we have with CDF is telling the truth. Ngana mulaya na tinkampela 10 kwacha ba Charles, you make a budget based on 10 kwacha. And if I only give you 2 kwacha, your budget goes through the window. That's the problem. That's why I call it the scandal. Cost of living. There are a lot of factors that are involved in the cost of living, but I've told you part of the solution. Reduce the price on electricity, reduce the price on fuel. Those 2 factors the government controls, because the taxes that go in fuel, the taxes that go in electricity are borne and directed by government. They can reduce that, which will reduce the cost of doing business. That will go a long way in helping reduce the cost of doing business. Once the cost of doing business is done, the cost of production of goods also reduces. It's that simple. It's not too difficult. And government has got a very strong hand in this. Amalite teifo tuchita import. We make amalite kunokuine. Kukariba, Kafiwe, Kuiteji. All these power dams are ours. So why can't we control the price of electricity? Every day, every other month, you hear ZESCO applying to ERB. They want to increase the tariffs on electricity. Why are the Zambians being punished? Last year, when you were buying electricity, 100 kwacha, ama what kilowatt mwaleshta na lelo bushewa mushta. Government can come in there, but because they are tied to IMF conditions, tabamisaka mene imwe. Wafya bulipo. Bale umfuila abasungu instead of kumfwe efe mule chula imwe. Wafya nkwete. Free education. Free education ine pano wa Charles na sambili muli wakaunda. That was proper free education. But you see the difference between that free education and today's free education. Ama schools by that time yari fulile, population tayari fulile sana. So we were able kuingira mu class. The maximum mu class tualeva generally that were fuller is about 30. Each pupil had a desk, but teacher bali kwete choko, blackboard doko yali, nchale shitama buku inewa chaos. Ibuku ngali hapa kutwala kuli teacher basaine watu pile buku. That was free education. Today you're calling it free education, woofy. The parents are still paying for their pupils, for their children. Number one. Number two, tamla kula ma schools yambi. Then you pronounce free education. And the population has boomed. Bah! To a fuller. And then the children go and get congested. And you're calling it free education. Just because mulefu haba na wale yaku school. Fish wale sambilila. The quality of education is being compromised. Don't be cheated. When the quality of education is compromised, it means you're not producing any pupils who are good at all. When the quality of education is compromised at tertiary level, you're expecting to find doctor uishibyoku milase nyeleti, nesi uishibyoku mipela dosage ya medicine, natabafishiwe. So the quality of that education is important. It's not just about pronouncing it. Free this, free that, to blind you. No. Let's look at the quality of what we're producing. Then you said about Christianity and the Pangas. What's the relationship, Charles? This country was pronounced a Christian nation by the late Frederick Chiluba. Wakateka, may his soul rest in peace. Valungu vaishilelunda pofye nokutupela 18th October as the day of national prayers. This president, Hakainde Hichilema, my friend, is on record saying that that day is a useless day. His own cadres are on record calling members of the Catholic Church bishops as Lucifers. Efyonde chita complain against Ifyo. If we call ourselves Christians, let's be Christians in our behavior, in our pronouncements. Nchita support ama pangas. In fact, if our youth besu, Zambia must prosper. Slogan yabo, tutilava yufi, kulwa no bongo. We are away from the pangas. But when we started this program, what is the philosophy of Zambia must prosper? I told you, we're going to run based on democratic Christian principles. And that's who we are. The exact number of teachers, when we pulled out, if you had a paper, a newspaper, or government right now employee, I'm a students, one, I'm a doctors, two, I'm a teachers. I'm a teachers, they were less than 15,000. I'm a doctors, they were less than 5,000. Those are the numbers twasangile ifwe. Not ama 11,000 and 30,000 vale mivepa. But ingamule fokula believe that vale ingile nchito bonsiabo. Trust me, bufi. But if you still believe, ndebe po bufi. Recently, my sister, Honorable Sylvia Masevo, ale tukama doctors. I shudder to think what will happen. Sylvia Masevo ngali luele mailo. I shudder to think. I'm not wishing Augulwala, but I shudder to think Sylvia Masewalwala. Ero asanga wewe ni umwe icho wale bati tawfiro kuba doctor nchaka kuingishene nchito ewe pa duty. What do you think that child would do? Nchilefua mwansuke tonton kanyen. Na totira wa child.
There you have it. We still have another caller. You are through to National Matters. Good evening.
Good evening.
May we have your name and where you're calling us from?
My name is Chireshe Mulenga.
Mr. Mulenga, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the Copper Belt.
Oh, okay. You can go ahead with your contribution, sir.
Good evening, President KBS.
Good evening, Mulenga. Wesu mkwai?
To start with, may I congratulate you, Mr. President, for having described the scandals of the UPND in the 2 years in government. Indeed, we are so grateful that we have people that have been following the scandals of this government. Now, our request on the Copper Belt is that as you form government, in 2026, please come and ensure that the mines are operational. We have suffered. Copper Belt is gone because of the empty promises of Bashi promise. He's busy traveling. He condemned the past regime. He condemned former President Mr. Edgar Chagwa when UPND was in opposition, that President Lungu was traveling too much. But now we have this marketing officer that has traveled to more countries in 2 years than the trips that PF made in 7 years. So, Mr. President, we want to encourage you. We know very soon they will come up with a fake issue so that you are implicated, so that they bring you down. We will stand up and support you. We thank you, Mr. President. We only wish you the best as you form government in 2026. Thank you.
Well, I think that one was just complimenting whatever you were saying, so I don't think you really need to
respond to
that from Mr. Chileshe. But we're still taking a few calls so that our guests can respond. Do we have text messages, those who have left us text messages, so that we can go through them before we wind up our conversation? But before that, do we have someone? Hello?
They said no messages.
Okay, so if we have messages or calls, we can take them just now. I think we have a caller. Let's have this. Hello, you are through to National Matters. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, and how are you? Where are you calling us from, and your name?
I'm calling you from Kasama, sir.
All right, we are talking to Mr.
I'm Thomas Mubanga.
Thomas Mubanga. Mr. Mubanga, you can go ahead with your contribution.
Thank you. I just want to commend the good evening, President KBS.
Good evening, Mubanga.
I like your coming up, as the previous caller said. You have really hammered the nail on the head. And what you have said is all of them, they are correct. This government has made us suffer. So please, maybe I can just advise you that you become a united force as opposition so that you don't fragment your effort. What you have explained is very correct, and I support you. I'm your disciple. Thank you.
There you have it. Well, we continue to emphasize here on Camnet TV that democracy is about tolerating the views from someone you might not like. So, and we continue getting those opinions in case you want to also give us your opinion on this edition of National Matters. You can do so and leave us also that message, and we'll be glad to hear and also let our guests respond. I also want to pick on another area of your interest.
Yes,
because I understand that constitutional matters something that we have also been talking about, especially with your background as a legal practitioner. We have been talking about matters. I don't think I heard from what you indicated as being the scandals. You did not talk about constitutional reforms. But I want to ask you this categorical perspective, because we saw that the Constitution gave us a lot of problems. And we also saw issues pertaining to what many refer to the third term under the Patriotic Front, where we saw there was that lacuna. We also had another hiccup in the Constitution, where even the current president was had challenges regarding the petition being heard before the courts of law. There was an aspect of 14 days and everything. So do we really need constitutional reforms as a country, and how urgent do we need them? And besides, we have a pending issue regarding the Bill of Rights.
Let me start with the Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution as it stands today is that there can be no amendment to the Bill of Rights without going through a national referendum. So that one will be very difficult. We need a full referendum where all citizens of age and our voters are required to participate and vote. That's the referendum. So the Bill of Rights right now will stay as it is until we have enough resources to conduct a national referendum. With regard to the constitutional reforms, right now the only perhaps area where I would say that we need to be very categorical and clear is when it comes to presidential elections, those articles, and how those petitions are conducted, how much time is given, and why. But you see, the reasoning at the time was that government must continue to function. And within 14 days, it was expected that the petitioners, if any, could have enough evidence to present to the courts, and the respondents would have their own answers, and the court would then rule so that an installation or inauguration takes place for the next president. Because you can't hold government in, abeyance just because there's a petition. It doesn't work. Government must function. So those 14 days, whether they're enough or not, that's another story. But even if it's not 14 days, say it's 30 days, it's 2 months, the courts, the constitutional court, still has power to nullify an election if they think there was malpractice. And I think that's the way to go. We've seen it happen in Kenya, so it can happen in Zambia. And for me, those reforms, as and when we think they are necessary, we'll make them. But as to the other parts of the Constitution, I think we've touched our Constitution too many times. Too many times, and I think it's a waste of resources now. We know what Zambians want. And one of the cardinal positions the Zambians have taken since the Choma Commission, the Mvunga Commission, the Mwanakato Commission, Mungomba Commission, throughout is that a president must only serve 2 terms of 5 years each. That's it. But there's a further cap there, that when a president has been elected twice and has been sworn in twice, that's it. Twice elected, twice sworn in. So it doesn't matter whether you're going to, rule for 2 years, but you went through an election. It's an election. That's the law. And that is how the Constitution is structured today. So for me, we must maintain that, because it also helps inject fresh ideas into the running of government.
As we head towards the 9 minutes of our program, there's another question that I usually ask, especially presidents of political parties, especially those in opposition. And I'm going to ask you also. This is a question to say, do you develop amnesia when you are given an opportunity to govern? Because when you are in opposition, you claim to speak for the people. What really happens?
Wasoko, I wish I was a mind reader. I wish I could answer that, but I'm not a mind reader, and I shall not purport to be one. But for me, I think it's just character. Leadership is about character. Leadership is about who you are. Leadership is about knowing what you want to do for the people and the reason why you want that power in the first place. We have seen, for example, that my good friend, I think for me, just wanted to be president. He wanted that as a cap on his back to say he was president of the Republic of Zambia, and that's it. As to whether or not he wanted to make a real difference for the Zambians, I don't think so. Otherwise, he wouldn't be pushing the Zambians into this poverty, this high cost of living, this lack of feeling, this insensitive kind of leadership. No. That is why, for me, I left the alliance. I saw through him, and I just told myself, we don't have a feeling, caring government here. This guy is here for himself, and that's it.
But the argument from those who remained in the alliance was that probably you were not appointed or given a job.
I didn't want a job. He did offer. I can't tell you what he offered, but he did offer. I said no. I didn't want. When you want to work with somebody, me, I'm a Christian, Soko. The good book of Amos tells me, if two must walk together, how can they if they don't agree? Why am I going to work with him when I don't agree? What we agreed upon at that time was the principle that PF at that time had become bad and it needed to go. And the majority of Zambians agreed with us and the message we took to them. Beyond that, no.
It's our last caller. You are through to National Matters. Good evening.
Good evening.
May we have your name and where you are calling us from?
Banda.
Yes, Babanda. Babanda, mutumira God.
Mutumira Chibata Chadiza.
Chadiza. You can go ahead with your contribution.
Mulibwanji Buya.
Abanda mulibwanji uko kuchadiza.
Buya. Koma Buya wa Jonsa. Wakababu Buya manyingi.
Oh.
Itopi ife anji mkuno. Tafuti kwa Fateleza umeoneka. Mtembo wauka waenda Kafogo. Kipe kabuti ilime. Na guru ya mazimani na azibambo. Mupitilize kuti makastongolele sino la Zambia. Tafuti ikakwambili. Pitilizani chabe. Otangana pambuyo mbuya. Yanganani pasombolo chikwenda kuti. Chalo iti kapita sino la tuaono mjenga. Uyu mulindi presidenti aononga ulimi. Kipepa tatu kuti tukulipisheni upitilize na pate yake. Ziko mfabi.
Zikomo Banda.
Well, I think Mr. Banda or Mark as our last caller, you can just give your perspective pertaining to what he said, and you can also give us your closing.
No,
remarks.
I can only thank Banda and the people who are thinking like him, because what we are seeing in the UPND government is total mismanagement. This is not what was promised to the Zambians. What I've tabulated here as scandals are much more than what the Zambians can fathom today. They can't take it. Go and ask the poor women on the streets. Ask the students in schools. Ask the poor nurses. Ask the poor doctors working long hours. No medicine, no equipment. They're tired. This is not how you run a country. It's not. And this, unfortunately, is against the backdrop of the number of promises my friend made to the Zambian people, which are turning out slowly to be lies upon lies and lies and lies. And I think the Zambians are seeing through him now. So that's all I can say. Zambians, remain steadfast. Zambia Must Prosper will soon announce its manifesto, and you shall see the difference in the leadership we shall provide. And soon we'll start traveling across the country. We'll start visiting you, and we'll start pronouncing ourselves as the next government. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, and we hope you also make yourself available when we call on you next time.
Anytime, anytime.
Interesting. Well, our dear viewers, you've been watching National Matters, and our guest has been Zambia Must Prosper President KELVIN BWALYA, commonly known as KBF, and we were discussing the failures and successes of the UPND government in office. And our guest prepared what he termed as a series of scandals in reference to what the United Party for National Development Administration did promise the Zambian people. Until next week, when we come with another interesting episode of National Matters, we'll continue interacting with various political party leaders, and we'll be also interacting with those in government to just get to reflect on what we are looking at pertaining to the UPND anniversary, two years anniversary in office. And remember that we always value divergent views, especially on national matters, and we value those of you who managed to participate on the program. This is where we have to call it a day, and remember to always keep it Camnet, because Camnet TV is not just another channel.